Welcome to Satsuki Bonsai Demystified. I'm Rick Garcia. Today we'll be demonstrating pruning for Satsuki azaleas, and we'll precede that with a brief discussion on the work we're doing today. This is one of several Satsuki-related topics whose persistent misconceptions are like the unrelenting buzz of cicadas in the spring. If you've heard cicadas in the spring, you know exactly what I'm talking about, and I had no clue until I moved to the Midwest. The most common advice you'll read or see tells you that the best time to prune is right after flowering. This is not only wrong, it's misleading and incomplete. I realize that's a pretty strong statement, and you may be thinking to yourself, all right, smart guy, when is the best time to prune? The reality is there is no best time to prune. There's only the correct time to prune based upon your objectives for each individual tree. Now, those objectives depend on several factors. Factors such as the health, the stage of development, and the variety. At the highest level, we can break pruning down into three distinct categories: pruning for health, pruning to maintain form, and pruning for structure. An example of pruning for health would be the fall maintenance that we do for our Satsuki. At that time, we're removing branches and preparing the tree for winter. And I go into this in more detail in my video on fall maintenance. The advice I mentioned earlier, after flower pruning, is an example of pruning to maintain form. After flower pruning is used on completed trees that are suitable for display. Pruning for structure is used for building branches during the development process. And not coincidentally, that's the topic of today's video. Before I introduce the tree we'll be working on today, it's important to understand the consequences of structural pruning as it relates to the variety we'll be working on. One consideration are varieties with unique requirements. Today I'll be doing a lot of aggressive pruning, reducing the length on branchlets. And if I were to apply this technique to a variety with unique requirements, those branches wouldn't respond with new growth. In fact, the branch would ultimately die. Hikari no Tsukasa is a variety that comes to mind. I discuss in my February video another variety that has unique pruning requirements, Hakure, in my video titled Prune Your Satsuki Bonsai Now If You Have This Variety. Another consideration are varieties with a single flower type or single color. These are easy. Anytime you prune and the resultant growth, the flowers on the resultant new growth will match naturally the flowers on the pre-existing growth. So everything just blends perfectly with varieties of a single flower type. No problem. Prune those with impunity. Another consideration are varieties with multiple colored flowers. These, you need to understand what the color distribution is on the entire tree before you remove an entire branch or branchlet. If you don't know what the color distribution is, you might accidentally break the color distribution by removing a branch or branchlet that had a flower type that you needed to retain and maintain that balance. So understand what the entire flower balance is in the tree before you plan to remove a branch or a branchlet. And finally, structural pruning can safely be performed anytime between March and mid-May. The star of today's show is a really fun medium-sized variety called Satsuki no Tsukasa. This particular tree was imported just over 3.5 years ago. Unfortunately, it was improperly packed and much of the crown of this tree broke off in transit. As a result, the next 2 years I was looking to reinvigorate the health of the tree while redeveloping that crown. And once the crown began to take shape, then I started working on the branching. 2 years ago, I wired and lightly cut the tree, and last year I didn't wire it, but I aggressively cut the branches to simulate the growth that we'll be working on in today's video. Here's the flower offered by this outstanding variety. My goal this year is to stimulate numerous strong shoots to complete the foundational branching structure. April is a great time to utilize pruning techniques for this purpose. In my book, I mentioned several types of pruning techniques, one of which is called aojiku. Aojiku involves cutting branches less than 1 year old in the middle of the branch. This is the primary technique I'll be using in today's video. So what do you say? Let's get to work. For today's work, I'll begin with the primary branch. Although today's objective is structural pruning, I'll still cut the remaining branches in relation to the primary branch. For some of you, this is your first time witnessing a Satsuki being pruned this aggressively. Let's take a moment to discuss why today's technique works so well and how it can engender confidence in achieving reliable results. Earlier I mentioned the primary technique I'll be using today is aojiku. In truth, I'll utilize several pruning techniques on any one tree. We're still early in the process of pruning this tree, so let's talk a little more about aojiku so you can keep it in mind throughout the remainder of the video. And we use this branch here to compare the different techniques. Unfortunately, this isn't a good angle to illustrate the differences, so let's change to a different view. I've backed the video up slightly to illustrate the technique with 3 cuts. Cuts 1 and 2 are aojiku. The third cut is furujiku, pruning branches that are greater than 1 year old. If I were to cut the branches marked 3A, B, or C, that would be aojiku. Those are all less than 1 year old, resulting from last year's cut. I'm taking the time to differentiate between the 2 techniques here because I've seen these techniques incorrectly described on several social media platforms. The techniques are not associated with the caliper of a branch, rather, they relate specifically to the age of a branch. Here is why I'm taking the time to compare these 2 techniques. When using furujiku, pruning branches greater than 1 year old, the chances of stimulating new growth are unreliable. Of course, if the tree is healthy and your aftercare is correct, you increase your odds of stimulating new growth using furujiku. On the other hand, when using aojiku, pruning branches less than 1 year old, your chances of stimulating new growth are virtually guaranteed. This is because shoots less than 1 year old are still young and vigorous, easily producing new buds after being cut. So you see, even in the world of bonsai, youth has its advantages. Several times today, you'll see me move a branch into position and then make my cuts. I'm trying to imagine the new branch position when I do wire in the future. If you do this, be careful of your fingers. I'm embarrassed to say that I've cut myself more times than I care to mention doing this. We're nearing the end of our pruning session. I sincerely hope this will give you the confidence to take this technique and utilize it on your own Satsuki. This technique is incredibly reliable and easy to use. You can do this. All right. Here we are with all the pruning completed on this great little Satsuki no Tsukasa. You'll also notice that I've replaced the top layer of soil as I demonstrated in a previous video. So for the next 2 or 3 weeks, I'll be root watering this guy less frequently. Because of all the pruning that I've done, it's going to use a lot less water for the next 2 to 3 weeks. So what I'll do is, instead of root watering, I'll actually use a fogger head and wet the trunk and branches a little bit more frequently. And once I observe the emergence of new growth, that's when I'll return the tree back to a normal watering schedule. So, that's it for today. I'd love to see your comments on this video. And if you've enjoyed what you've just seen, please click the thumbs up and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.